This is a story that challenges everything we know about justice, faith, and miracles. The protagonist was not a saint. He was a man who had committed terrible mistakes. But what happened in his final hours would prove that the mercy of Our Lady of Guadalupe knows no limits. Prepare yourself to witness one of the most remarkable miracles ever documented inside a prison. A story that changed not only the life of a condemned man, but also forever transformed the faith of everyone who witnessed the impossible. Before we go on, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of Our Lady of Guadalupe are reaching. Daniel Rodriguez was 35 years old when he received his maximum sentence. During his childhood, Daniel would accompany his mother to Mass every Sunday at St. Joseph's Church. She always carried with her a small rosary and a medal of Our Lady of Guadalupe that had belonged to her own grandmother. Carmen, she used to say, "When everything seems lost, remember that Our Lady never abandons her children." But life on the streets was stronger. At 17, Daniel became involved with gangs. By 19, he had already been arrested 3 times. At 26, during a convenience store robbery, something went wrong. Detective Ryan Sullivan lost his life. Daniel swore his innocence, insisting that he was not the one who fired the shot, but the evidence appeared irrefutable. The trial lasted only 2 months. The prosecution portrayed Daniel as a dangerous, remorseless individual. The overworked and inexperienced public defender Lisa Wong barely managed to present convincing arguments. The jury deliberated for only 5 hours before declaring him guilty. Daniel Rodriguez, Judge Patricia Harrison, said during the sentencing, "You have been found guilty of the crime against Detective Ryan Sullivan. This court sentences you to the maximum penalty." Carmen, his mother, collapsed in the courtroom. Over the 9 years that followed, she visited Daniel faithfully every single week, always bringing her Our Lady of Guadalupe medal and praying the rosary with him through the glass that separated them. Daniel shared his cell only with his memories and a growing sense that he had been wronged, but he could not prove his innocence. During those 9 years, something began to change within him. The constant visits from his mother, always accompanied by prayers to Our Lady of Guadalupe, started to awaken again the faith he had lost on the streets. The prison chaplain, Father Miguel Herrera, a 71-year-old Mexican priest, also played a key role in this transformation. He visited Daniel weekly, not bringing sermons about condemnation, but messages about forgiveness and redemption. "Daniel," Father Herrera would say, "God knows the truth even when men fail to find it." During the 6th year of his imprisonment, Daniel began attending the prison services. He relearned how to pray the rosary as his mother had taught him in childhood. Gradually, he began to find peace, even knowing that his sentence was drawing near. But it was during the 8th year that something extraordinary happened. Daniel was in his cell praying the rosary that his mother had managed to get authorized for him when he had a vision. A woman dressed in blue and gold appeared before him with a gentle smile and eyes full of compassion. "Son," she said with a voice as soft as a breeze, "your mother has never stopped praying for you. Keep praying. The truth always comes to light." Daniel blinked and the vision disappeared, but the sense of peace it left behind remained with him. He told Father Herrera about the experience, who listened with attention and respect. "Daniel," said the priest, "Our Lady appears to those who need her most." On November 20th, 2003, Daniel received the final notice. His sentence was scheduled for November 23rd at 7 p.m. All legal appeals had been exhausted. There would be no more postponements. In the 3 days leading up to his sentence, Daniel received his mother's visit for the last time. Carmen, now 74 years old and visibly weakened by the years of struggle to save her son, arrived carrying something special. "Son," she said, holding a small framed image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. "This image belonged to your great-great-grandmother, then to your grandmother, then to me. I want you to have it in your last moments." The image was nothing elaborate, a small print of Our Lady in a simple wooden frame, no larger than the palm of a hand. But for the family, it represented decades of faith, prayer and hope. Daniel held the image against his chest and cried as he had not cried since childhood. "Mother," he said, "thank you for never giving up on me." On November 22nd, one day before the sentence, the warden, Carlos Martinez, went to Daniel's cell to ask about his last wishes. "What will your last meal be?" Martinez asked. Daniel looked at the small image of Our Lady of Guadalupe in his hands. "I don't want a special meal, sir. I only ask that you allow me to keep this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe with me until the end." Martinez frowned. It was not common for a condemned man to refuse a last meal. "Are you sure? You can ask for whatever you want." "I'm sure," Daniel replied. "I only need her with me." The warden agreed. After all, it was a simple and harmless request. That last night, Daniel could not sleep. He spent the hours praying the rosary and gazing at the image of Our Lady. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, he began to recite a prayer his mother had taught him in childhood. "Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mother of God and our Mother, intercede for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. You who are the refuge of the afflicted and the consolation of the sorrowful, receive me in your mercy." It was then that the first miracle happened. Around 4:30 a.m., the night guard, Antonio Valdez, was making his routine rounds along the corridor when he noticed a soft light emanating from Daniel's cell. At first, he thought it was just a reflection, but as he drew closer, he realized the light came directly from the small image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. "Daniel," Valdez called. "What the hell is going on in there?" Daniel looked at the guard, then at the image in his hands. He too was seeing the light, a golden and gentle radiance that seemed to pulse softly. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice filled with awe. She's glowing." Valdez stepped closer to the bars. He had worked in that prison for 16 years and had never seen anything like it. The light came from no external source. It emanated directly from the small image. "That's not possible," murmured Valdez, grabbing his radio. "Central Control, this is Valdez. I need someone to come to cell 49 immediately." Within minutes, the night supervisor, Jennifer Kim, arrived, accompanied by 2 other guards. They all froze before the phenomenon. The small image kept glowing with a soft but unmistakable light. "It must be some kind of trick," said Kim, trying to keep rational. "Daniel, where did you get this?" "My mother brought it," Daniel replied, still in awe of what he was seeing. "It's a family image that has been passed down for generations." Kim called the warden Martinez, who arrived at the prison at 5:15 a.m. When he saw the light emanating from the image, he was left completely speechless. "Call the chaplain," Martinez ordered, "and let no one speak of this until we understand what is happening." Father Herrera arrived at 5:45 a.m. When he saw the image glowing in Daniel's hands, he immediately knelt down. "Lord, have mercy on us," whispered the priest. "This is a sign." "A sign of what?" asked Martinez, clearly disturbed. "Our Lady is interceding," Father Herrera replied with conviction. "Something extraordinary is going to happen." On the morning of November 23rd, the day of the sentence's fulfillment, news about the shining image of Our Lady of Guadalupe had spread among the staff. Some guards were requesting to be transferred to other sectors, fearful of the supernatural. Others, out of curiosity, found excuses to pass through the corridor. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, something extraordinary happened. One of the most senior guards, Robert Murphy, a 61-year-old man known for his harsh and skeptical personality, approached Daniel's cell. Murphy had worked in that prison for 25 years. He had witnessed dozens of sentence fulfillments and prided himself on never showing emotion. But when Murphy looked at the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Daniel's hands, something happened that changed his life forever. He began trembling uncontrollably and collapsed to his knees on the cold floor of the corridor. "I can't anymore," Murphy cried out, tears streaming down his hardened face. "I can't carry this weight any longer." Daniel and the other guards were shocked. Murphy was known for never showing weakness or emotion. "What's going on, Murphy?" asked Martinez, who had come running after hearing the screams. "I lied," shouted Murphy, sobbing uncontrollably. "I lied at the trial. Daniel is not guilty." The silence that followed was deafening. Martinez felt his legs grow weak. "What are you talking about?" asked the warden. Murphy kept crying, his words coming out between sobs. "I was there that night. I saw everything. It was Carlos Mendez, not Daniel. But Carlos was a police informant, and Detective Alan Garcia paid me to lie at the trial." Daniel clutched the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe to his chest, barely able to believe what he was hearing. "I carried this lie for 9 years," Murphy continued. "Every day, I thought of his mother's face in the courtroom. But I was afraid of what Garcia would do to me if I told the truth." Martinez immediately called the prosecution and the defense. Murphy's confession, witnessed by several prison staff members, was enough to immediately halt the sentence. At 12:30 p.m. on November 23rd, Daniel's sentence was officially suspended. Murphy's confession triggered a full investigation into Daniel's case. Detective Alan Garcia, already retired, was interrogated and ended up confirming the corruption scheme that had led to Daniel's wrongful conviction. Carlos Mendez, the real culprit, had died 3 years earlier in another state. But the evidence that had been suppressed during the original trial was finally brought to light. The prosecution, faced with undeniable evidence of police misconduct and perjury, had no choice but to drop all charges against Daniel. On January 20th, 2004, almost 3 months after the original date of his sentence, Daniel walked out of prison a free man. His mother, Carmen, was waiting outside the gates, holding the same Our Lady of Guadalupe medal she had carried during all those years of vigil and prayer. "Our Lady never abandoned you, my son," she said, embracing the son who had been returned to her by a miracle. Daniel's story quickly spread, not only because of the injustice he had suffered, but mainly because of the miracles that preceded his release. The small image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which had shone on that last night in prison, was examined by experts. They found no scientific explanation for the light that had emanated from it. The image of Our Lady was exactly what it appeared to be, a simple wooden religious image. Daniel used the compensation he received from the state to create a foundation dedicated to helping other prisoners who had been wrongfully convicted. Father Herrera, who had accompanied Daniel throughout his entire journey, said this was the most powerful miracle of Mary he had ever witnessed in his 42 years of priesthood. Our Lady came into a prison, he said in a later interview, to save not only Daniel, but also the soul of Robert Murphy. She turned pain into redemption, lies into truth, and despair into hope. Carmen lived to see her son get married and have 3 children. She passed away in 2011 at the age of 80, holding the same Our Lady of Guadalupe medal she had carried with her throughout her life. The small image of Our Lady of Guadalupe that had shone that night is now kept on a special altar in Daniel's home. He looks at it every day and remembers the night when Our Lady interceded for him in such a powerful way that it transformed hearts of stone. This story reminds us that the mercy of Our Lady of Guadalupe knows no walls, no bars, and no sentences. She intercedes especially for those who need it the most, for those whom the world had already abandoned. The miracle of Our Lady of Guadalupe was not only that Daniel was set free. The true miracle was how the intercession of Our Lady transformed everyone involved, from the guard who found the courage to tell the truth to the prison warden who witnessed the power of faith. Robert Murphy, the guard whose conscience was awakened by the supernatural presence, left his position at the prison shortly after Daniel's release. He dedicated the remainder of his life to working with organizations that fight wrongful convictions, carrying the weight of his redemption through service to others who had suffered as Daniel had. Warden Carlos Martinez, deeply shaken by what he had witnessed, implemented new protocols at the facility to ensure that spiritual needs of inmates were better met. He often spoke publicly about the night the image glowed, never claiming to understand it, but always acknowledging its power to change lives. Father Miguel Herrera continued his prison ministry with renewed passion, often sharing Daniel's story with other inmates who had lost hope. The chaplain would tell them that no situation is beyond the reach of divine mercy, no heart too hardened for redemption, no injustice too great for God's correction. The night guard Antonio Valdez, who had first witnessed the supernatural light emanating from the image, experienced his own transformation. A man who had grown cynical after 16 years of working in the correctional system, Valdez found his faith restored by what he had seen. He began attending daily Mass at St. Joseph's Church, the same parish where Daniel and his mother Carmen had worshipped during Daniel's childhood. Valdez would often kneel before the statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe in the church, remembering the impossible light he had witnessed that night. Jennifer Kim, the night supervisor who had been among the first to see the glowing image, left her position in corrections to pursue studies in theology. She often said that witnessing the miracle had shown her that there were forces at work in the world beyond human understanding, forces of love and justice that could not be contained by prison walls or legal proceedings. The other guards who had witnessed the phenomenon found their lives changed in smaller, but no less significant ways. Some became more compassionate in their treatment of inmates. Others began attending religious services for the first time in years. All of them carried the memory of that night as proof that the impossible could happen when faith intersected with desperation. The story of Daniel Rodriguez and the miracle of Our Lady of Guadalupe spread far beyond the walls of the prison and the borders of their state. Letters poured in from around the world, from people who had heard the account and found hope in their own desperate circumstances. Families of other wrongfully convicted individuals reached out to Daniel's foundation, seeking not just legal assistance, but spiritual comfort. Years later, Daniel would receive visits from people who traveled great distances just to see the man who had been saved by divine intervention. Some came seeking advice about their own legal battles. Others came simply to touch the hand of someone who had experienced a miracle. Daniel always welcomed them with humility, making it clear that he was not the source of the miracle, but merely its recipient. The foundation that Daniel established with his compensation money grew beyond anyone's expectations. Within 5 years, it had helped to exonerate 12 other wrongfully convicted individuals, providing them with legal representation, investigation services, and emotional support. The foundation's logo featured an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, a constant reminder of the divine intervention that had made their work possible. Each person they helped received a small prayer card with the same image that had glowed in Daniel's cell that miraculous night. Detective Alan Garcia, the corrupt officer whose lies had sent Daniel to death row, faced federal charges for his role in the conspiracy. During his own trial, Garcia publicly apologized to Daniel and his family, though he could never fully repair the damage his actions had caused. Garcia spent his remaining years in federal prison, reportedly finding his own faith through the very story of the man he had wronged. The convenience store where the fatal shooting had occurred was eventually demolished and replaced with a small memorial park. The community placed a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe at its center, not only to remember Detective Ryan Sullivan, who had died there, but also to celebrate the truth that had finally emerged through divine intervention. The prison where Daniel had spent 9 years of his life underwent significant changes in the wake of the miracle. A small chapel was built within the facility, featuring a prominent altar dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Inmates from all faith backgrounds would gather there for prayer and reflection, many reporting their own experiences of peace and spiritual healing in the sacred space. The cell where Daniel had been housed, Cell 49, became something of a pilgrimage site within the prison. Guard would often find inmates kneeling outside its bars, praying for their own redemption or for family members facing difficult circumstances. The administration eventually placed a small plaque near the cell, not describing the supernatural events, but simply noting that this space had been witness to the power of faith and the triumph of truth over injustice. Father Miguel Herrera wrote a book about his experiences ministering to Daniel and witnessing the miracle. The book became a bestseller, with proceeds donated to Daniel's foundation for the wrongfully convicted. In it, Father Herrera emphasized that miracles were not magic tricks performed for entertainment, but divine interventions that occurred when human systems failed and only God's justice could prevail. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe that had glowed that night continued to hold a place of honor in Daniel's home. Visitors would often ask to see it, hoping perhaps to witness another supernatural event. But Daniel would always explain that the true miracle was not the light itself, but the transformation it had brought to so many lives. The image now appeared ordinary, a simple wooden frame containing a faded print, but its power remained in the memory of what it had accomplished. Daniel's children grew up knowing the story of their father's miraculous deliverance, but more importantly, they learned the values that the experience had instilled in him: compassion for those who suffer injustice, faith in divine providence, and the importance of fighting for truth even when the odds seem impossible. They often accompanied their father to speaking engagements where he would tell his story to law students, police academies, and religious gatherings, always emphasizing that the real miracle was not his freedom, but the transformation of hearts that occurred along the way. The annual memorial service for Detective Ryan Sullivan became a moment of reconciliation rather than division. Daniel would attend each year, not to celebrate, but to pray for the soul of the man whose death had led to his wrongful conviction. The detective's family, initially resistant to Daniel's presence, eventually welcomed him, understanding that he too had been a victim of the corruption that had obscured the truth about their loved one's death. Robert Murphy, the guard whose supernatural compulsion to confess had saved Daniel's life, lived his remaining years as a man transformed. He established his own ministry for former inmates, always carrying with him a small replica of the Our Lady of Guadalupe image that had changed everything. When Murphy died 15 years later, Daniel spoke at his funeral, calling him a man who had found the courage to choose truth over fear. If this story of the miracle of Our Lady of Guadalupe has touched your heart, share it with your loved ones. May it inspire us never to give up on prayer. Even when everything seems lost, Our Lady never abandons her children. No matter how dark the night may be, the light of her mercy can always shine through it.